So I think if I reflect on the last few years, the biggest breakthrough was in the development of the post-2015 agenda. The comprehensive nature of the Sustainable Development Goals, the global agenda to 2030, for the first time recognized explicitly the importance of cities in helping local delivery against global goals. And it's not just in Goal 11. If you look across all of the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development, there's a very clear role for local authorities, local partners, and cities to make a positive contribution. This is a very clear breakthrough in terms of those of us who know the field by comparison with, say, 15 years ago. The Cities Alliance was very much created as part of the Millennium Development Agenda. But that was very much a collection of countries from the global north collaborating to provide assistance to the south. And we came out of that background. The SDG process is completely different. The goals are universal. All countries report on the same goals as each other. And for us, this has also meant that we had to rethink the Cities Alliance. So while we have always been partnership-based and partnership-focused, it was clear to us that we needed to open up the Cities Alliance to new members, to create new kinds of partnership. So partnerships that are both horizontal in the country level, but also vertical at the country level, but also open the space for new players. Very specifically, in our first 15 years of our life, we were successful, but we were carried very much by the weight of our multilateral and bilateral members. Now we are opening up the Cities Alliance to knowledge institutions, such as universities, to the private sector, to foundations. These are new categories of partner that were not there around, but the institutional architecture is changing. And we think this is going to revitalize both our work program and the partnership aspect of the Cities Alliance. Why a partnership? Because the challenge is way too big for any single organization to be doing it alone. And we do need to incorporate a range of new thinking. The only way to do this is in partnerships that work. And that, I think, is the difficult challenge. You won't find anyone who's opposed to partnership. It's like a global good. Partnerships that work, this is a lot different. I mean, Africa remains still the least urbanized continent. It is, by common consent, possibly the fastest urbanizing continent. And so the next 10 to 30 years will see a transformation of Africa demographically. Historically, including till today, there has been a noticeable ambiguity from national governments around the growth of cities, around urbanization. And by and large, the response from a national government point of view has not been a positive one. And so we have seen significant distortions in the urbanization patterns, which means that the bulk of growth in African cities is informal, it's unplanned, and to policymakers, it looks messy. This is the challenge for African cities. It's much more, it's changing thinking about urbanization, changing thinking about the role of cities, about the role of local governments. So and we see here at AfriCities, and I would say in the last few years, we have seen a number of governments significantly change their perspective, in our view, in a very encouraging direction. However, I would still identify three major challenges that African cities throughout the continent will have to cope with. The first is, and this is something that we continue to investigate with United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, is the constitutional, legal, fiscal framework that exists at national government level. In our own assessment, and we just brought out our second report and launched it yesterday, most African environments, national environments, are not conducive to cities performing the functions we want them to perform. That's relatively not difficult to fix, but it requires a new politics. The second is, of course, what happens at city levels themselves. And some of the policies implemented by the mayors themselves are also not conducive to long-term sustainable development. So we see not enough attention to, for example, land markets, to forward planning, to making space for urban growth, service provision, partnerships with the private sector, focusing on too narrow a vision of the city rather than thinking about what is my city going to look like in 2030, 2040? What actions do we need to be taking now? It's a completely different thinking that we need from most African cities. And please remember, most of the growth is happening in small and medium-sized cities, not in the mega cities. It's not getting the attention of the policymakers. And then the final challenge that I would see is in many ways the most difficult, which is even if we give to African cities the legal authority, the resources, the constitutional authority, we have to ask the question, are there enough qualified staff in African local governments to actually perform the functions that we want performed? And so addressing this, I don't think of it as a capacity gap. We need to think about a professional civil service at the local level. We need to pose the challenge, should local government be a career opportunity for African professionals? Until we have that debate, I don't think we're going to answer that question. How to take the very positive framework that the heads of state delivered to the city community in September in New York, and how to turn that into a roadmap for operationalizing. So, in my view, the new urban agenda must be complementary to the Sustainable Development Framework. It must give the city community at large, the practitioners, a very clear identification of the main priorities and the main tools that have. It also provides, so that's the challenge, I think, of the new urban agenda, but also the process moving up to October provides the opportunity for a new coherence to emerge amongst the different role players that are interested in promoting this urban agenda, the city agenda. I prefer the city agenda because we have very clear constituencies, mayors, city managers, who understand what cities are and how they need running. So this is the challenge. If Habitat 3 is a success and the new urban agenda, I think that the best indicator of the success, besides hopefully a new coherence amongst the development partners, would be national governments, who are still the instruments of the United Nations system, national governments taking the leadership to relook at their frameworks within which their local governments, their cities operate, and almost certainly in most countries introducing necessary reforms to empower local governments on a long-term basis, to turn local governments into not competing spheres of governance, but complementary tiers of government. That would be my main indicator.